Welcome to this edition of Rattling the Bars. I'm Mansa Musa. When we hear June 19th or Juneteenth, we are given the impression that we should be celebrating the end of slavery in one town, one part of Texas. What is being celebrated is, in essence, people remain in slavery well after they were freed. And this is the case when it comes to mass incarceration and the prison industrial complex. The 13th Amendment legalized slavery. And with slavery comes abolition. The tagline being offered by Californians United for Responsible Budget, or CURB, is we're calling on California to close 10 prisons in 5 years. Here to talk about this is Amber Rose Howard, Executive Director of CURB. Welcome, Amber.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's such an honor to speak with you today.
And as you've seen, I open up with, this is going to be our June 19th, all things considered. And as I said earlier, I outlined that, we're celebrating something that for most people and most activists realize that it's a misrepresentation of a reality, that the people that was told June 19th that you're free was really just being held up for more labor until they had no choice but to tell them, because eventually somebody will come down there and say, oh, y'all got to go. So here, I want you to talk about, first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself and about CURB.
Okay, sure. And thanks again for having me on. Folks, my name is Amber Rose Howard. You can call me Amber Rose. Executive Director here at CURB, Californians United for Responsible Budget. And we are a coalition of over 80 member organizations across the state of California. And we have a 3-point mission, which is to reduce the number of people incarcerated in California. That includes prisons, jails, and immigrant prisons, to reduce the number of institutions like that exist, and then to get the state to redirect that spending, all the money they've been spending on prisons and jails, and put it into the community, because that's where we know safety really is, right? If we have what we need, then the people will be safe. So that's our mission. I got into this work because I am formerly incarcerated. I was convicted of a serious violent felony when I was 18 years old. And it just really propelled me into a life to think about, how do we tear down the prison industrial complex? Realizing that it is an extension of slavery, realizing that it is racially charged, realizing that it does target Black people. I said, you know what, this is the new fight. This is where the fight has been handed off from our elders and ancestors, and so this is where I am.
Okay, and Amaro, talk about the CURB got what they call the People's Plan.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So first, let's talk about the People's Plan, then roll that over into some of the recent developments in implementation of the People's Plan.
Absolutely. Okay. So CURB got together, and we were founded in 2003, and really the opportunity for CURB, for folks that got together to found the organization, there was an opportunity to close a prison down here in Southern California, but it fell through. And so folks said, well, how do we build from there? Well, this is 20 years ago in 2003, when folks were building up to closing prisons. Not until 2019 did the governor say, finally, we're going to start to close some prisons in California. And that is strictly because of the advocacy of people. Like, let's never think that any state governor is going to say, let's do the right thing and free people and close prisons on their own, right? That's full people power. So the thing is, they kept looking to the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, with a small rehabilitation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kept looking to this CDCR department for a plan on how to select prisons, which ones to close, how is that going to happen, what it's going to look like. And meeting after meeting at the budget committee hearings and all that at the Capitol, they never came up with the plan. So we got together in our coalition and said, you know what, let's give them the People's Plan.
That's right.
Because we know that they're not going to include our voices. They're
That's
not
right.
going to enter people who are directly impacted by this prison system.
That's
so
right.
It's up to us to hand them the plan, because they don't know what they're doing. So, so we got together and created the People's Plan for Prison Closure, which really just outlines, look, in order for us to keep closing prisons, we have to reduce the number of people inside. So we're
That's
giving
right.
suggestions on, pass these laws, pass those laws in order to reduce that population. This is how you do it safely to make sure that people have resources when they come out. And once we do that, we can start to shut down prisons. So that leads back up to 2019 when the governor finally announced some prison closures. Now, again, they didn't have a plan for it. So even after our people's plan for prison closure, we had to produce another document to say, look, this is the roadmap. If y'all are a little bit confused by this lengthy report produced, here goes something that can be real straightforward for you, right? We can really lay it down for you to say there's a few phases to this. One phase is selecting prisons for closure. Now, we have centered the voices of not only folks who are formerly incarcerated and on the outside like myself, but we centered the voices of people who are currently incarcerated in California state prisons. We sent in a survey to all 35 prisons and said, we got almost 3,000 responses back. And so the folks were saying, these are the criteria that you should consider when you're closing prisons, which look like, outside of how much it's going to cost to rebuild the prison or the operations of the prison, the state thinks about the money part, right?
That's right.
People said, no, we need to consider how far is it from your loved ones,
That's right?
How far do they have us sitting away from people who are going to support us in the community? Those should be closed, right? Thinking about how many homicides and suicides happen in these prisons.
That's right.
What is the violence looking like in these prisons? We should consider those, right? And then what is the climate and environmental justice looking like around these prisons, right? Because in California, we have the brush fires happening every single summer. When it gets too hot, we have 2 prisons right now up in the Central Valley that are about to be flooded, right? So the people inside said, these are the extra things that y'all should be doing in order to close the prison. So we offer that. The second phase is to say prison population reduction, and again, passing policies that would attack all of those harmful policies that came out really like in the 90s, between the 70s and the 90s, right? In retaliation to the Black liberation movement. That's what
That's right. Come on.
For real. So
that's what it was.
Laws that will criminalize more people because they realize Black folks are standing up. We don't like this. How do we come up and get rid of them? So we said, well, let's reverse those policies, right? So that's how we're looking at, and we have reversed many of them, which continues to bring down the population. The third part we say is we need a just transition to support impacted communities. Now, the state is real focused on what do these neighborhoods, these towns where prisons exist, how do we keep their economy going after a prison is closed, right? And many of these towns are fighting back to say, no, we need this economy, don't close our prison. And for me, y'all sound like slave owners.
That's what they are. Come on, tell the truth. That's what they are. That's what they are. Slave owners, plantation.
On the slave economy, you know what I'm saying?
That's right.
And so we're like, no, you don't need a slave economy. There are plenty of other ways to produce income for this town,
right?
People in it, rather than this form of slavery. And so we talk about what are the economic opportunities that the state can provide that can be pulled from federal funds in order to keep a town going without a prison.
And you know what? And let me hold you up right there. And the reason why I want to hold you up right there because in the conversation of abolition, right? That's the one thing that you hear. We know that these towns, if you take these prisons out, that tumbleweed is a follow. As soon as the last prison is there, a tumbleweed gonna replace it. But the humanity, and that's what I wanted. That's why I wanted to stop you right there because I want people to understand that Curb is not inhumane in terms of what they want to get done. This is a humane call. This is not a vengeance call. This is not a, we're going to pull out and leave your ass in there the way you, and let you feel what we felt. No, we're saying that the responsibility, and then reimagining the abolition, reimagining prisons going, we're reimagining a holistic society, and this is a part of, go ahead, continue.
That's right, exactly. I mean, and you're totally right in saying that. I appreciate you bringing that in because people think, oh, we just want to get our people out, move on, whatever. No, we're talking about changing the entire structure of society here. We're saying that, listen, we need our people free. We need our people living outside of prisons. We need resources in the community. And we know that, people who work for the Department of Corrections, them corrections officers, they have one of the highest suicide rates in the state of California.
Come on, that's right. Yeah, they doing a bit. They doing a bit.
It's unhealthy for everybody.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's just a destructive system for everybody.
Right.
So folks who work for that system, like, what am I going to do for a job? Wouldn't you like a job that doesn't cause you the type of stress that you get from being a slave owner? Really?
Yeah.
The
Come on.
overseer? You know what I'm saying? Like, wouldn't you want something different for yourself, for your family, prolong your life, right? And so this is actually a revisioning that can really benefit everybody.
Didn't y'all going for? Didn't y'all just come up with a victory in terms of like the budget or the divestment? And I want to echo that point, because when this is our conversation of Juneteenth, and we're saying that we're coming. We're not looking for somebody to come and tell us that we're free. We're saying that we're free, and now we're saying that not only we're free, but that we're going to dismantle the 13th Amendment by taking away the profit margin that keeps the 13th Amendment alive. Once that profit margin is gone, the 13th Amendment will be gone in and of itself. So go ahead, talk about y'all recent initiative that y'all took.
Absolutely. So, we took the people to the Capitol. We got together folks from across the state and said, let's go up here and have conversations with these people in person. We do online advocacy a lot where folks can send in letters, make phone calls, but we went to the Capitol to advocate. And California had this idea that they would spend $360 million to rebuild San Quentin State Prison, which is the oldest prison in the state. And we said, no, this is ridiculous. You can't rebuild a structure and say, oh, we're going to rehabilitate y'all if we do more construction on this prison. That has nothing to do with it. When the people are inside, the people get their minds free together with themselves in community. It has nothing to do with this system of imprisonment. It has nothing to do with the physical prison. So
that's right.
So we went to advocate to say, no, we have to fight back. And we can say that the people power helped push them in the right direction. The state, the assembly, and the Senate told the governor, we reject this proposal. We don't need to spend $360 million more on San Quentin. So that is a victory. And of course, there's a long way to go there. And also, I guess another victory I'd say is that the people pushed the governor to announce more prison closures. So as of now, there were already 2 closures, one happened, one is in the process. The governor announced an additional 2 closures and a bunch of yard closures at different prisons. But
come on,
what we're looking forward to is another 5 closures happening by 2027. Now, we know that it's possible because even the state's own legislative analyst office, which is nonpartisan, they said, listen, we have 20,000 empty prison beds in the state of California. Y'all have to close more prisons, right? So we're getting even the state's analysis to say this is the right direction to move. So we do really feel like the people's power is pushing toward that. And in terms of, I tweeted something a couple years back about Juneteenth, and I was thinking about James Baldwin when he said, what is the 4th of July to the slave, right?
That's right, come on.
Along that lines. And so I said, well, what is Juneteenth to the incarcerated Black person?
Come on. What is it?
Right? Like, what is Juneteenth to me if I'm sitting in a prison cell?
That's right.
If I'm in chains, if I'm behind bars, it doesn't have any significance. So I say, to everyone who wants to celebrate Juneteenth, to everyone who wants to go out and party and eat your food and celebrate, that's cute, and we like that. But
we don't have no problem with people celebrating.
No problem with a little plate,
Yeah.
But I do implore people to think about the fact that we have,
2.5 million people in prison.
Exactly.
2.5 million people in prison. 2.5 million people and locked up because of the 13th Amendment, and it's reimagination. That's what we're doing, and the whole thing about this conversation we have today is saying like our reimagination. This is the implementation of our reimagination. It's not a stretch of the imagination. My director sent me this quote saying that we live in capitalism. Its power seemed inescapable, but then so did the divine right of the king. See, at one time, the sun never shot. It was a saying that on the British Empire, the sun never set it on the British Empire because that's how massive it was. That's how much they had colonialized territory. Now the sun probably set like right now, probably set right on that. The power they got right now probably is one outhouse. That's how much power they got because of people coming together and getting their liberation, and people coming together and imagining another life. So I want to push forward on this issue of our reimagination going forward. Right, going forward, because you outline some critical things that y'all implement. But going forward, okay, we get to 2027, and we got what we want. Okay, what we gonna do with our people when they come out? What's y'all plan to get out? Because we don't want them to say take one incident and then make that one incident become the reason why they should revisit the plantations. So what do we have in place for our people when they come out? Because we know we're going to need help.
Absolutely. And I think that's the importance of the work that we're doing around the budget is because we, in California, for example, we spend $18.5 billion a year on the carceral structure, right? Yeah. And so we're saying, well, with prisons closing and populations reduced and people going back to the community, let's get these millions of dollars.
Come on.
And put them into the community. We're talking about permanent and safe and secure housing.
We're
talking about resources in the community where people can have mental health care, physical health care, emotional wellness.
That's right.
Where the youth can have places to go to express their creativity and further their education.
That's right.
We need that money to be spent on. And so the state is taking steps to do that, but we know that it's going to take a lot more work from the people to get all that money here, right? We know that infrastructure in the community is what's going to keep us safe.
Come on, that's right.
If it wasn't in crisis, then they wouldn't be harming each other. If we all have what we need, there's no space for harm, right? And so that's what we're pushing the state to do. Let's reinvest those funds into the community so that returning citizens and returning people can experience life and thrive in it, right? Because we do have those resources, we just been spending them the wrong way.
And you know what? I'm thinking, as you talking, right? Because I remember somewhere along the line in history, and you can correct me if my rendition of history is incorrect, but I remember somewhere along the line in history when they freed us, they say they're going to give us 40 acres and a mule. So $1.5 billion is a whole lot of acres and a whole lot of mules to be given to the population of California. And more importantly, to your point, right, you create jobs. And a friend of mine was telling me, say, when a person have a job and have an income, they feel good about themselves. They got a life. And when you taking the monies that you're putting into maintaining the prison industrial complex, the military industrial complex of the California prison system as we know it, then all you're doing is taking and furthering the narrative about the 13th Amendment and legalized slavery. Yeah. But now because of CURB, we can see the reimagination taking shape in the form that you outlined. Talk a little bit more about going forward, what y'all gonna be doing.
Absolutely. So going forward, we plan to continue to engage the state, the governor's administration and the budget committees, really where they make the decisions about public safety. We have pretty good relationships there now, but we have to continue to push them to spread that money out. There's a few roadblocks that people have to apply for the funds that have been released and have been redirected. So we're trying to fight those barriers to say it should be a lot easier for people to apply for this.
That's right.
For organizations, all these strict guidelines aren't going to help us. We just be able to funnel the money to the communities a lot faster. So that's what we're going to be working toward. And also, you know what? If they do agree to close 5 more prisons by 27, that means that the state will have closed 8 prisons within less than a 10-year span.
Come on, that's
okay.
That's phenomenal. That's phenomenal. That's phenomenal. That's phenomenal. That's right. That is. That's a June 16th. That's a June 16th. When 2027 get here, every time they close the prison, we like, yay, we fireworks and look, march around with whatever flag we want, hail to the king and a whole bunch of other stuff.
Exactly. It's a reason to celebrate, but it's also something that pushes us to say, wow, if we can go from 35 prisons and cut that down by 8, then what's that, 27 left? Then I think we can do 10 more in the next 8 years. You know what I'm saying? And then we can do 10 more after that. So
And you know what this do? You know what this does when in terms of like the effect, because I did 48 years before I got out, and when changes was coming in terms of us knowing we was getting ready to get out. This what it does. See, it changes the mentality of the people that's locked up. It changes the mentality of the people that's in the plant on the plantation. Because now, see, it's a difference between me never getting out or me being in an environment where it's fight or flight. You know, where you put me in the system and say like, oh, you're a gang member, so therefore fend, versus saying like, oh, this group curb this infrastructure in California. They just closed 5. They come down the road. They get ready to close these. It's a different when you hear that resonating through the population, saying like, "Man, look, if I'm alive, I can get out."
Yeah.
So I'm gonna stay alive to get out.
Yeah.
But more importantly, I'm gonna create an environment where everybody think like that. Oh, we can ready to get out of prison. Why are we at each other's throats?
Yeah.
Why are we like battling over turf war in a prison when we got a reality before us to say, I'm going to be able to get out there and raise my kids. I'm going to be out there to hug my mother. I'm going to be out there to hug my wife. I'm going to be out there to network with my sister. So y'all really, when this whole sister impact, the impact of this, what y'all doing is really resonating in prison, because you even outlined it when you said that y'all strategy, y'all went inside.
Yes.
Tell us what need to be. Tell us how this look inside, and work our way outside to develop a policy and a perspective. And more importantly, you said one word I didn't hear you. You said something I never heard. You ain't say this word out your mouth, which I was proud of you. And you never said reform, because we're not trying to reform a plantation.
We don't need no reform. We're not reforming a dang thing. We out here. We want to tear it down.
That's right.
And show the world what we really can build up. Absolutely.
Yeah, so, and we thank you for coming on. Tell, how can we get in touch with you, and tell our audience, you know, what they can do to get in touch with y'all and
Absolutely.
Support y'all effort.
Absolutely. You all can look us up at curbprisonspending.org. If you want to reach me directly, you can reach me at Amber Rose at curbprisonspending.org.
There you have it. Amber Rose.
Thank you so much for having me.
And you know what? And we're saying this here. You rattled the bars today.
Yes.
George Jackson said that they would hear the rumbling of our feet. And we know for right now that George Jackson is proud of the members of Curb, because we know that when y'all took the initiative to say, you're not putting one more penny into that goddamn decadent ass San Quentin. When y'all made that statement and stepped forward, that went a long ways in terms of the future of the men, and more importantly, the women that's in prison system. So we ask you, our audience, to review this information, to review Curb, to look at what they're doing, and reimagine a society without a prison. Reimagine a society where $1.9 billion is being invested in schools, hospitals, grocery stores, infrastructure, a playground where your children can play. Reimagine that the monies that's being put into the prison industrial complex, the military industrial complex, is being put back into inside society and being reinvested. And the reinvestment would yield this. The reinvestment will yield a quality life for people. Not only the people that's getting out, but the people that's left behind, them communities where the prisons were. You can have a quality life. You can reimagine having an industry and living in a town where you don't have to wake up and think about whether or not your loved one will come out of prison alive because of the brutal conditions that they work under. So we thank you, and we continue to ask you to continue to support Rattling the Bars, because
Absolutely.
It's only that you're going to get an Amber Rose and a Curb report on Rattling the Bars. You're not going to get it from no other major network. Nobody going to talk about $1.9 billion being taken away from a prison industrial complex. Nobody going to sit up here and talk about how the devastation from prison. They're not going to give you this information on major news network. You only going to get this information on the real news, and you only going to get this information when you rattle the bar. Thank you very much, and thank you, Amber, for enlightening us and giving us this opportunity.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you so much for watching the Real News Network, where we lift up the voices, stories, and struggles that you care about most. And we need your help to keep doing this work, so please Tap your screen now, subscribe, and donate to the Real News Network. Solidarity forever.